Well, we're focusing on sports, and that's football. You know, they say he's the king of all sports. Well, Mr. Segun Odegbami joins us now. Of course, needs an introduction. Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Well, let's start off with remembering Rashidi Yekini, and then we'll move on to sports administration in the country. I mean, as at the time he died, there were all kinds of versions of stories out there. And some even blame the media because, I mean, they say that the media helped peddle some of those untruths, you know, as it were, but you knew him very well. You were with him some time ago, we understand. Tell us about this.
Unfortunately, Rashidi Yekini had to be the sacrificial lamb for all that has happened to Nigerian sports. But specifically in his own case, he was a very misunderstood person. Aside from that, I would really like to testify that the Rashidi I saw 6 weeks ago, the Rashidi that I have been communicating with up to 3 weeks ago before I traveled out, was very, very sane, no sign of any illness. He was all right. We discussed all manner of issues, and there was absolutely no reason for Rashidi to have died. There's a young man in Ibadan called Bayo. He is Rashidi's closest friend. Rashidi set him up with a video shop, and every day that's where Rashidi goes to watch Yoruba video, movies, and so on when he finishes his training. Bayo is perhaps the closest person to him. Bayo has not stopped crying up till now. He calls me regularly, and what he tells me is they have killed Rashidi. There was nothing wrong with that man. They have killed him. They have killed him. And it is so worrisome now because questions are really not being asked. We heard that people went and abducted him. He was coming from training, got to his house, and they were waiting outside. Some people known to him, family, and they forcefully took him away. Where did they take him to? Was it a hospital? Was it a harbor center? Where did they take? Why did they take him there? Because there was absolutely nothing wrong with Rashidi. We've been hearing stories, we've read all kinds of reports about Rashidi being mad, walking the streets of Ibadan and all those things. He did a few things that were not normal, but who would have done normal things if you lost your fortune the way he did? He suffered huge financial losses at a point about 2 years ago. And because he didn't have any friends who were close to him, he couldn't even share his pain and burden with people. So he had to bear himself. He could have committed suicide, but he didn't. Rather, he behaved abnormally for a while. And that was the cause of his depression. And it was something that time had healed. Because the Rashidi I saw, we were planning. We met, Rashidi and I, at Onireki guest house. I drove in his car. He carried me in his car. This was 6 weeks ago. And we went to Onireki guest house, just the two of us with my driver. And we sat and for over 1 hour, he unburdened his challenges to me. And we now decided that, okay, from now onwards, Rashidi, we are going to get you back into the limelight. I will not create any embarrassment for you to go and have you at interviews where you cannot speak English and people start to laugh at you and all of those things. We give you what you really know how to do, which is football. We're going to make you train with kids. You are going to distribute balls to kids and all that. And his eyes just lit up. He was now willing to do it. We had discussed with the biggest bank in Nigeria. They were excited to have Rashidi come and be the ambassador. First Bank. I started the conversation. Super Sports have come. I don't know if I'm advertising it, but they had come very interested in what was now happening with Rashidi, and they wanted to do a documentary. I said, no documentary. Support Rashidi for this cause, and they were willing to give him 5,000 balls to distribute to kids all over the place. I wrote about it in my column. Unfortunately, I traveled to Ethiopia for the World Congress on Public Health. By the time I came back, I was calling his number, and it wouldn't go. I called Bayo. Bayo said he had also been trying to get him, but he never came to watch his videos. He didn't see him, and suddenly we just heard that he was dead.
So this looks like premeditated.
Absolutely. Who were those that went and took him away? Why did they take him away? If he was ill, who certified that he was ill? He was not ill. He played football on that day. He was driving his car. He was not disturbing anybody. He had his own problems. Rashidi has always been a recluse. Even when he was playing for Nigeria and getting all the awards and everything. Rashidi was not somebody they would find at a party. He never did any of those things. He never smoked, never drank. He had his own narrow world. He didn't care about material things. All he cared about, because of the limitations, one of education, of bits and pieces, he just kept to himself. He didn't seek publicity. He didn't ask for help from anybody. He never sought anything from anybody. In 2005, when I got him to come to Gateway, he was playing football in Ibadan. And I came, and through bio, I got to him, Rashidi, come and play one more year. He was so excited. He didn't collect even the wages that we were paying him.
We actually saw him play, and everyone, we actually likened that to what the Brazilians would do. After you play your international, you come back home to play with the locals, and we felt that that was fantastic.
Absolutely.
But again, for a man who was coming from training, exhausted, thinking that he was going to have a good time rest and being abducted, how come no one even called anyone? Because Rashidi Yekini was already a national hero, someone who actually was able to beat your own record, you said.
Absolutely.
So
he was chasing after me.
Honestly, so
and he beat me.
And he was gone, and no one reported to the police and all the administrators. Or isn't there anything that could look after ex-internationals?
Well, Rashidi's case is very, very. There's so much suspicion because people actually saw when he was abducted. Bayo had been there. And in fact, at his burial, some people had owned up that they were part of it. And these were people, for example, that Rashidi knew. He knew one of them, very, very close to him. And he came out of his car, from what we were told, and they just grabbed him. And people were watching. Right now, I hear that in Ibadan, the youths around his house have said that they didn't want to see any family or friends or whatever. Who were those that went? They said they were two spiritual people. It was apparent from their apparel that they were two. One of his relatives, one very close to him, who must have been tricked, believing that all these stories were true. They wanted to take him to cure him of something.
Without the police.
And the police had said way back when Rashidi had this depressive problem, they took him to the commissioner of police. From what we read, and the commissioner interviewed all of them and said, "It is you people that have a problem, not this young man that I'm seeing before me. Nobody should take him anywhere without the presence of the police." Now they did this, and Rashidi is dead. So it just calls, from what you said, it just calls for closer attention at what is happening to our sports heroes, our football heroes, because they are out there in their hundreds, I tell you, all over the country. They keep in touch with me because somehow they feel that I am like, that person who could lead or something. I am in the media, I am doing stuff here and there and so on. So a lot of them keep in touch with me. Many of them are dying. They are in poverty, they are in penury. Many of them, like Rashidi, didn't train for anything. Most of their youth, they spent playing at sport. And when they retire, they just find, like Zinedine Zidane said, he just found that he couldn't do anything with his life. Because you had spent the greater part of your life playing this game. And suddenly you can't do anything.
I think that happens even to many people in a host of other professions. But how can we begin to correct that in football?
Those of us, by the special grace of God, that have the opportunity, that know what needs to be done, we need to come together to set up a proper body that would be like an advocacy group, to let those who can help start to help, to let those who can contribute start to contribute towards something that can be institutionalized, so that once you finish your career in sports, there's something for you to do. And there's a whole world out there for us to do. But people are not looking in those directions because they just don't know. There's so much ignorance in this country, particularly about the power of sports. Sports can do so much. The scope is incredible. Sports for health, sports for the economy, sports for education, sports for participation. So much to be done. Sports for business. But yet we haven't even scratched the surface. Anything that's going to happen anywhere, they call on Segun Odegbami. I don't know much even about the sports, but yet they make me an expert just to tell you how vast the field really is. I have just come from the Congress, Public Health Congress, with 4,000 medical practitioners from all over the world. I'm just an ordinary football player. I have just been invited to Harvard to go and to participate in a discussion research project. I just came back.
Don't you think that education gives you that leverage? Are we taking education, conventional education in tandem with, are we taking it seriously?
We are not. And that's why it's so important for us to really get our priorities right. You see, we have kids. Those who are involved in sports are kids, they are children. And these children must never, considering that we're a third world country, must never be allowed to just participate in sports without an education. I listened to Shaquille O'Neal the other day. He just got his doctorate, and he was telling them why he did. He said it was key for you to have an education. We have maybe between 16 and 18 million children below the age of 25 who are in this country now, who have no education. They are just roaming the streets. Our population, about 60% of our country is made up of people below the age of 25. Our life expectancy is about 47. All these young people, this young country, many of them will just die early because there's not enough information out there. Where do you get the information from? You have to have an education. It is so important.
So the NFF, should they be focusing on that as well, in addition to developing sports?
It is not the business of the NFF. It is the business of government to make sure that there is a law, and it exists now, but it is not enforced, where every Nigerian child must go to school. If you want to participate in sports, you must do it within a sports environment. The president set up a committee about a year ago. I head the committee, the Nigeria Academicals Sports Committee. The intention is to make sure that if you want to participate in academical sports, that is school sports, you must be in school. We have expanded it to make sure that if you want to participate in sports at all, you must be in school. To drive enrollment back into school, to drive retention in school, to make sure that you get an education, minimum education, up to secondary school level. And we have said that if you want to play for Nigeria at under 17, please be in school and play. But you see, that's where the NFA is making the mistake. They are thinking from their own narrow perspective to say, let's just pick them from anywhere. Not realizing that picking them from anywhere encourages cheating, encourages children to stay out of school, and so on and so forth. So it has to be a combined effort. We have to have this global picture of where we are going. We must address the issue of our youths in this country, using sports as one of the instruments to empower them, to engage them.
That brings us to this challenge of God, because sometimes NFF, NFA, we understand there are court injunctions not recognizing the NFF in the first instance, but they still go about calling themselves NFF, and it should be NFA. How do we get things right now? What is the challenge that we're facing?
You, the media, refer to them as NFF.
It should be NFA, isn't it?
It's NFA. Isn't that what, you're a lawyer. Isn't that what the court said? The court made certain pronouncements. An election is annulled. The procedure of that election, please, it is not on. These people should not parade themselves as so. They are there. A court gives a decision that the NFA is the body known to Nigerian law. The NFF is not. Yet it is the NFF that even the Senate refers to that body as they are still appropriating funds to that body that the courts have said does not exist. This is in this country. It's not a secret. So we do not even respect our own laws, which is unfortunate. But
what's in a name?
Oh, it's not, for me, it's not about the name. But you see, when you look at it closely, they said, the NFA people, the NFF group, they wrote an affidavit, which is deposited in the courts, to say that they do not collect, they are not a government body, they do not collect appropriation from government. What they get from government are just grants from government, which is not true. They had an election under the platform of Nigeria Football Federation that does not exist in law. A court says it is not on. So there's something in the name.
You know, going back to what you talked about, the development of the game as well as the players, so that when finally they leave the pitch, they have a life. One fantastic individual, apart from you, is also the Attorney General in Rivers State, Adokia Amiesimaka.
Yeah.
So how were you able to, that is your own group now, how were you able to mix football and education? Because really, once upon a time, people just believe that you have to play football 100% full-time and take school out of it for you to be a successful footballer.
No, that's not true. If you look down the history of Nigerian football, you find so many who went through school and played their football. Patrick Ekeji is there, Felix Owolabi is there, Shola Akinwale is there. So many, they are out there who actually had an education and played football. In fact, the vast majority of those who have succeeded in Nigeria, you find that they played at one sport or the other in secondary school. I'm sure you also did. At one sport or the other in secondary school. You don't have to be a champion. All we need for you to do is just participate. Some will fall by the wayside. They go on to universities and become lawyers and doctors. Some that excel in their different sports can go on and become professionals. And if you want to be a professional, it's advice that make sure that you go to those environments that will give you the opportunity to combine your sports and your education. And they exist.
In Nigeria?
Yes. If you go to Obafemi Awolowo University now, we have a relationship with my school, my academy. They encourage that our own students to go to their school. We have students in their school. Uniport, for example, 2 of my students have gone to Uniport purely because on the strength of their academics and their sports. So we have to have more of these institutions rather than convert our playgrounds in secondary schools into more structures for classrooms. We should allow those kids to go and play. It elongates their lives. It gives them an opportunity in sports, in that huge sports industry for those who excel. And the benefits are too much.
In other words, Sports Academy, I think having them is quite useful. For instance, look at the underage football, China's Kids Cup, the academy you also run, and all of that. So you say at the end of the day, it's going to help erase this controversy concerning age cheats?
Absolutely. But you see,
but if we don't keep records, we can't even erase that at the end of the day.
Yes. Well, the best records you can keep are the records of admission into secondary school. When you go into secondary school about 11, usually you don't cheat. And if you are in secondary school, by the time you are representing your country, it's likely that you would register your correct age. But once you are out of it, as we do now, you find that those who represent us at under 17s, 99% of them have been out of secondary school, either for 3, 4, 5 years, and yet they claim to be under 17s. So there are no records beyond secondary school. That's why it is important. It is very important that we make it compulsory. Once you get them at that age, you register their ages at that age. You can't change it anymore, particularly if you have a system that can capture their biometrics, that can keep the information, the data, and you make it also compulsory that you cannot, it's going to be hard for you to play for your country if you are out of school, not necessarily as punishment, but because being in school empowers you, prepares you for a better life beyond your sport. So we must encourage our children to do that. School is the answer. Our grassroots sports development, school is the answer. To eradicate illiteracy in this country, school is the answer. To elongate the lives of our children, school is the answer. It is an institution. You can go there, measure something from when it starts and finishes, and you can get the results. Out of school, then we have this madness, this chaos we have in this country, where nothing is recorded, nothing is documented, you don't know, and it just makes cheating flourish.
You just mentioned something about grassroots development. It's something that has always come up again and again in Nigerian football. People are looking for the days they'll return to the glory days of football when all Nigerians will actually sit and expect magic from their teams. How can we focus on grassroots football development while at the same time achieving results in whatever international competition we go for as of now?
School. I keep saying it. School is the answer. Let us focus on the schools. let us make sure that every school in Nigeria...
How does school come in? Because, I mean, here we are...
We're talking of grassroots.
Exactly, we're talking of grassroots. I mean, we all know that grassroots takes a while to develop. It takes a while to refine and, you know, to the desired products that we want. But here we are as Nigerians watching our teams go out and we want results almost immediately. Do you think we can actually exercise that patience, or can school actually come into this particular mix?
Well, are we achieving the results now that we are not focusing on the schools? Our sport, like every other thing in Nigeria, in our country, is in total chaos. We can't even define the grassroots sports development. Where are we developing it? You don't have the playgrounds in the local governments. You don't have... Nobody's in charge. But if you put this within an institution where you have people who run the institution, where there's permanency, you can measure, you can count, you can keep information and data, and you can provide the facilities within that environment, then you have a basis to start to truly do sports development. It has to be tied to school. Out of school, I don't see how it will happen in this country. Nothing is happening anyway. But in school, you have at least some kind of control. We must make sure that there are certain laws that make it compulsory.
Let's quickly bring
every
this
school
in.
must have minimum number of facilities for its students, so that they can just go there and run and jog and do whatever.
Well, you've said that much, but again, how can we make football very, very, should I say, vibrant to change the economy now? We're talking about the way it is in Europe. You want to call it big money, because the only time we get to hear about big money is when we talk about the administration of football in Nigeria, maybe the NFA or the NFF. That's when people get to hear monies. So how can we make it so interesting to the extent that our local leagues can as well, when we say, who do you support? You can say Shooting Stars, Eyimba, things like that. Because doesn't that give you some kind of worry?
Absolutely.
That we haven't gotten to that stage yet?
Absolutely. Football is big business in the world. And I told you I just came back from Harvard. That was the concern of the Harvard Business School, that Africa has not tapped into that global football and, in fact, sports business yet. We haven't even scratched the surface. And they invited 5 experts from across the continent to come and discuss how that can be achieved. Why is it so? And we went there and we discovered that even South Africa, that pretends to be doing sports business, they haven't even done anything. Nigeria, we haven't scratched the surface. The industry is there, but we don't have the people, we are not training them, we don't have the knowledge, and so we are just groping in the dark. We need to start to add capacity here in this country to the people who run our sports, so that they can go out there, learn, and come back and introduce products, services, innovations that will change our football from where it is now. Not generating anything, not bringing anything. There's not one football club in this whole country that's making anything. They are not making money. It's one huge drain pipe. Every football club in this country. We can now have that transformation. But you need people who have the passion, people who know, who are sensitive to the issues, who are willing to learn, who go out there and empower themselves with knowledge and information and start this transformation process. For as long as we have administrators who don't deserve to be there, who are there for other reasons other than development, it will continue to be so, unfortunately.